the next NDP MP of Spadina, Fort York. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are standing on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, as well as the ancestral home to members of the Métis Nation. In Toronto and towns and cities all over this country, working people are getting screwed over. You know it, and I know it. We're watching the richest of the rich get richer, while our paychecks and pension checks get gobbled up every month by the skyrocketing price of everything we need. Regular folks, our neighbors, need a champion more than ever today. And wow, do we ever have a champion by our side?
You're so right, Norm. There is only one leader in Canada that demanded and forced the grocery store CEOs to get their wealthy butts to Ottawa and answer for their rip-off prices. That was Jagmeet Singh. There's only one leader in Canada that forced this disappointment of a government to do the things that they have refused to do all along. That was Jagmeet Singh. And there's only one leader who delivered on dental care and the start of a national dental program. Again, my friends, that is Jagmeet Singh. And listen, there is only one leader in Canada that can take on Pierre Poilievre and his cutting agenda. It is someone who is a champion of working people and who stands with those who feel like they have been left behind. Friends, it is my great pleasure to introduce Leader of Canada's NDP, Jagmeet Singh.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. Lauren, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank
we pay our bills, buy our groceries, or pay the rent. Justin Trudeau has let Canadians down. And Canadians are done with his endless disappointment and delay. Trudeau's Liberals can't deliver change. They are too weak and too selfish to stop Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. And let me be clear, Conservative cuts would take things from bad to worse. Pierre Poilievre will take from workers, from retirees, from young people, from patients, from families, in order to give more to big corporations and wealthy CEOs. He will pour fuel on the fire of corporate greed. It will be a free-for-all for the rich and powerful, with no one standing between the greedy giants and the rest of us. He will cut and gut Medicare as we know it. Not only will he cancel dental care, which is now giving millions of families and seniors the opportunity to get the dental care they need, he will end pharmacare and tear down healthcare brick by brick until the only way you will get the care you need is if you can afford to pay for it. As we have just seen, he would rather fight with nurses than hire more of them. Everything Pierre Poilievre does is designed to take from you and give to the ultra wealthy. He will sacrifice our kids' future so that big oil companies can make even more money, so that rich CEOs can make higher profits off the backs of working people. There's a battle ahead of us, the fight for the Canada of our dreams, the fight against Pierre Poilievre and his callous agenda of conservative cuts, the fight to restore hope, and the promise that working hard gets you a good life. I'm ready for that fight. Yesterday, I notified the Prime Minister that I have ripped up the supply and confidence agreement. And when the next election comes, my friends, I am running to be the next Prime Minister of this country.
Thank you. Thank you.
Because, friends, in the next federal election, Canadians will get to choose between Poilievre's conservative cuts or the hopeful future that New Democrats can bring. The future Poilievre wants is mean and small, but Canadians are not. I've heard from you. I've heard from so many of you that life has become too exhausting and too expensive. It doesn't have to be this way. I want to tell you that it's okay to have hope. Hope that Canada's middle class will once again thrive together. Hope that this generation and the next will be able to afford a home of their own. Hope that we can stop grocery greed from ripping you off and bring down prices. Hope that healthcare will be there when you and your family need it. Like many of you, all my life I've been told it can't be done. Cynics will say Canada has never had an NDP government. It's not going to happen. They will attack us for taking on the powerful, for getting in the way of big corporations ripping you off. The attacks have already started. by self-serving politicians like Pierre Poilievre, who won't do anything for someone else unless he benefits. But Canadians aren't selfish or cynical. We believe in lifting each other up, not tearing each other down. We're a nation of people who take care of our neighbors. We're a nation of builders. We're a nation of believers. We will not let them tell us it can't be done. Because if we are together, nothing is impossible. Big corporations and wealthy CEOs have had their government. It's the people's time now. Le Canada est un pays où nous prenons soin les uns des autres, où nous enseignons à nos enfants les valeurs de la compassion et de la générosité. Autrefois, le Canada était un pays où travailler fort permettait de mener une vie agréable, où le salaire d'un emploi décent permettait d'avoir un logement adapté à sa famille et un frigo bien rempli, où la taille de votre portefeuille ne détermine pas la vitesse ou la qualité des soins de santé que vous recevez. Pour des millions de personnes, le rêve canadien est dur à imaginer. Ils travaillent plus dur que jamais, mais n'arrivent pas à joindre les deux bouts. Beaucoup ont perdu l'espoir de pouvoir un jour s'acheter une maison, que les soins de santé seront disponibles quand ils en ont besoin, ou qu'ils pourront un jour prendre leur retraite dans la dignité. Mais en même temps, ils voient que les ultra-riches se portent mieux que jamais. Les géants de l'alimentation, les promoteurs immobiliers et les PDG des grandes entreprises font des profits records. Et malgré ça, ils continuent d'avoir de l'aide de l'État. La cupidité n'est pas une valeur canadienne. Justin Trudeau a prouvé à maintes reprises qu'il n'est pas capable de se tenir debout devant les PDG. Et les gens en paient le prix chaque fois qu'ils payent leurs factures, font l'épicerie ou payent leur loyer. Justin Trudeau a abandonné les Canadiennes et Canadiens. Les gens en ont assez de ces déceptions et de ces promesses brisées. Les libéraux de Justin Trudeau ne peuvent pas amener le changement et l'espoir que les gens ont besoin. Ils sont trop faibles et trop égoïstes pour arrêter Pierre Poilievre et les conservateurs. Soyons clairs, les coupures conservatrices vont empirer les choses. Pierre Poilievre va s'en prendre aux travailleurs, aux jeunes et aux familles. Il va couper les services pour donner plus aux grandes entreprises et aux riches PDG. Il jettera de l'huile sur le feu. Ce sera une partie de plaisir pour les ultra-riches et les PDG. Et c'est vous qui paiera le prix. Il l'a dit. Il va mettre fin au programme de soins dentaires. Il va mettre fin à la gratuité des contraceptifs et des médicaments pour le diabète. Il démolira le système de santé brique par brique. Il va couper le financement en santé et vous devrez payer pour voir un médecin. Il préfère insulter les infirmières plutôt que d'en embaucher. Il veut sacrifier l'avenir de nos enfants pour que les grandes pétrolières puissent faire plus d'argent. Et il va laisser les PDG s'enrichir sur le dos des travailleurs et de leurs familles. Poilievre veut qu'on se divise au lieu de s'unir et de s'entraider. Une bataille nous attend. La lutte pour le Canada de nos rêves. La lutte contre Pierre Poilievre et son programme de coupure conservatrice. Le combat pour ramener l'espoir et la promesse que le travail dur permet d'avoir une bonne vie. Je suis prêt à me battre. Hier, j'ai informé le Premier ministre que j'avais déchiré l'entente avec les libéraux. Lors des prochaines élections, je me présenterai pour être votre Premier ministre. Merci. Merci. Les gens auront le choix entre les coupures conservatrices de M. Poilievre ou l'espoir d'une vie meilleure. L'avenir que veut Poilievre est petit et mesquin. Mais les Canadiens ne le sont pas. La vie est devenue trop épuisante et trop chère pour trop de familles. Mais nous pouvons ramener l'espoir. Nous pouvons ramener l'espoir. L'espoir que la classe moyenne puisse à nouveau s'épanouir. L'espoir que cette génération et les suivantes puissent s'offrir un logement. L'espoir que nous puissions arrêter les arnaques à l'épicerie et baisser les prix. L'espoir que les soins de santé soient disponibles lorsque vous et votre famille en avez besoin. Comme beaucoup d'entre vous, on m'a dit toute ma vie que c'était impossible. Les cyniques diront « Le Canada n'a jamais eu de gouvernement néo-démocrate ». Ce n'est pas possible. Et nous attaquerons parce que nous nous attaquons aux ultra-riches, parce que nous nous opposons à ce que les grandes entreprises vous arnaquent. Les attaques ont déjà commencé par des politiciens égoïstes comme Pierre Poilievre, qui ne comprennent pas pourquoi quelqu'un veut aider les autres, qui ne feront rien pour quelqu'un d'autre à moins qu'il n'en profite. Mais les gens ici ne sont ni égoïstes ni cyniques. Nous sommes un peuple de travaillants, un peuple qui croit en ses moyens, un peuple qui va plus loin. Ensemble, rien n'est impossible. Les grandes entreprises et les riches PDG ont eu des gouvernements à leur service. Maintenant, c'est à votre tour. Merci. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. With that, I'll pass the mic to Nina, who will handle the questions.
We're going to start with questions in the room. So let's start with Barbara. Can you please do name and outlet, and then one question will follow.
Hi there. Good morning. Barbara with iPolitics. What specifically led to the decision to cancel the agreement with the Liberals? Were there any recent developments or turning points that triggered this decision?
Thank you for the question. We've got a lot done. We've got some important things that we completed. But it became very clear to me that Justin Trudeau is too beholden to corporate interests to go further, unwilling to stop big corporations that are ripping off Canadians. And so I've ripped up the supply and confidence agreement with Justin Trudeau. And we know that that makes the election timing more uncertain and frankly more likely. And we know that the next election is going to be about a choice, a very important choice for Canadians, between Pierre Poilievre, who wants to destroy our healthcare system, tear it down, or New Democrats who want to fix our healthcare system, build it up for people. That's an important choice, and that's the choice we're bringing to Canadians.
Would you mind saying this in French as well?
Oui, bien sûr. Donc, on a accompli des grandes choses. On est fiers de ça. Mais c'était vraiment clair que Justin Trudeau n'a eu pas le courage pour faire face aux grandes entreprises qui exploitent les gens. Et les gens méritent plus. Donc, on a décidé de déchirer notre entente parce qu'on a besoin de plus d'actions pour arrêter ces grandes entreprises qui arnaquent les gens. Et donc, on sait que ça veut dire que maintenant, le timing pour une élection est incertain. Et on est prêt parce que la prochaine élection va être un choix entre les conservateurs de Pierre Poilievre qui veut couper notre système de santé, effectivement, qui veut démolir notre système de santé, ou les néo-démocrates qui veulent travailler ensemble avec les provinces pour régler notre système de santé et renforcer les appuis aux gens. Ça, c'est le choix dans la prochaine élection.
Thank you for this. And how would you respond to accusations that canceling this agreement creates political instability at a time when Canadians need it least?
Well, we were very clear that we were able to get some important things done, dental care, pharmacare. But it's also clear that Justin Trudeau and the Liberals were unwilling to stop big corporations from ripping off Canadians. And we saw the effect of that, paying more than ever for groceries. And it became very clear that Justin Trudeau and the Liberals were unwilling to do what's necessary to stop these big corporations from ripping you off. And so we decided to rip up the agreement. And now it really sets up the question for the next election. The next election is going to be about a choice between Pierre Poilievre, who wants to let his corporate buddies rip you off even more, jack up your rents, and make you pay even more when you go to buy your groceries, or New Democrats who want to save you money, save you when it comes to buying your groceries and your rent. That's a choice in the next election.
Catherine Brulotte, Radio-Canada. D'abord, avez-vous confiance en ce moment envers le gouvernement Trudeau?
On a déchiré l'entente avec Justin Trudeau. Et on sait que ça veut dire que maintenant, une élection est plus probable que dans le passé. Et on a fait ça parce que c'était vraiment clair pour nous que Justin Trudeau et les libéraux n'ont pas eu le courage. Il était trop faible pour faire face aux grandes entreprises qui exploitent les gens, qui arnaquent les gens. Et on sait que dans la prochaine élection, les gens vont avoir un choix. Un choix entre Pierre Poilievre qui veut laisser ces grandes entreprises de vous exploiter, plus, ça veut dire plus d'une augmentation pour les prix des épiceries et de votre loyer. Ou les néo-démocrates qui veulent réduire le coût de votre épicerie et de votre loyer, sauver et économiser l'argent pour les gens. We tore up the agreement with Justin Trudeau, and we know that that means that an election now is more likely than before. And we've accomplished a lot together. It was important work, but it became very clear to me that Justin Trudeau and the Liberals were far too weak to stop big corporations from ripping off people, and people deserve more. And we know now that that sets up a question for the election, a choice between Pierre Poilievre, who has made it clear that he will allow his corporate buddies to rip off Canadians even more. That means higher prices at the grocery till. That means higher rents for corporate landlords. Or us, New Democrats, who want to stop these corporations from ripping you off and save you money when you buy your groceries or pay your rent. That's a choice in the next election.
Comment allez-vous voter si un parti présente une motion qui dit simplement que le gouvernement n'a plus la confiance de la Chambre?
Donc, à cause le fait qu'on a déchiré l'entente avec Justin Trudeau, c'est clair que ça a créé une situation où une élection est maintenant plus probable que dans le passé. On va regarder chaque vote et décider c'est quoi dans l'intérêt, c'est dans l'intérêt des Canadiens et des Canadiens et Canadiennes, Québécois et Québécoises. Donc, on va évaluer chaque décision avec cette lentille, c'est quoi dans l'intérêt des Canadiens. Mais ce qui est clair pour la prochaine élection, Justin Trudeau et les libéraux sont trop faibles pour faire face aux conservateurs et les coupures de Pierre Poilievre. Nous, les néo-démocrates, sommes prêts pour cette bataille, pour cette lutte. On est prêt pour présenter une option d'espoir. On peut ramener l'espoir pour les gens. On peut renforcer notre système de santé. On peut arrêter ces grandes entreprises d'arnaquer les gens.
Victoria Sentwith, CBC National News. What is your assessment of how the supply and confidence agreement worked for the NDP? And do you think you'll actually be able to leverage more from the Liberals without this deal? If you could answer in English and French.
Sure. When I think about the supply and confidence agreement, I think about two people and what it means to those two folks. That to me is something I keep in my heart. I think about Brianna, a mom of 5 kids, who was able to get each of her kids a visit to the dentist for the first time in their life. And I met her kids at a park in Edmonton, and I can tell you her kids were happier and healthier because of that visit. And I think about Susan, who insists I call her Sue. And I remember meeting her in Ottawa, and she was sitting in the dentist chair when she told the dentist and the denturist that she is a cancer survivor. She beat cancer, but in the aftermath of that, lost her teeth, and that she wanted her smile back. And I remember her tears of joy when the dentist and the denturist said, "We're going to get you your smile back." That's who I think about. I think about Sue and I think about Brianna and millions of people like them that have gotten support because we fought for them. But I also know that Sue and Brianna need a lot more, and that this Liberal government is not willing to do that Justin Trudeau is simply not willing to stop big corporations from ripping them off. And that's why we made this decision. It is clear that the Liberals and Justin Trudeau do not have the courage. They're too beholden to corporate interests to stop them from being ripped off, to stop people from being ripped off. And we know that this sets up potential for a more likelihood of an election. And that election is going to come down to a choice. Pierre Poilievre, who's going to let his buddies rip you off even more. He's going to let big corporate grocery stores rip you off even more. And that means higher prices when you buy your groceries. Or New Democrats who are going to save you money when you buy your groceries. That's a choice in the next election. You wanted that again in French? Oui. Donc, quand je pense de ce qu'on a accompli, je pense de 2 personnes en particulier. Je pense à Brianna, une mère de 5 enfants, et je les ai rencontrés à Edmonton. Et à cause de ce qu'on a fait, ces enfants ont eu la chance pour la première fois dans leur vie de visiter un dentiste. Et j'ai rencontré ces enfants et je peux dire que ces enfants étaient plus heureux, plus en santé à cause de ces visites. Je pense de Suzanne, et elle a dit que je dois dire Sue, donc je vais l'appeler Sue. Sue, c'est une personne âgée avec un salaire fixe. Elle a survécu le cancer, mais elle a perdu tous ses dents. Et j'étais avec elle quand elle était dans le bureau d'un dentiste, et elle a dit que je veux avoir mon souris encore. Et je me rappelle le moment où le dentiste et le denturiste ont dit qu'on va vous donner votre souris encore. Et elle a pleuré en joie qu'elle va encore avoir sa dignité. Et je pense de ces 2 personnes quand je pense à ce qu'on a accompli, mais je sais que les 2, Brianna et Sue, ont besoin de plus, méritent plus de ça, parce que le coût de la vie est trop haut. Et je sais que Justin Trudeau n'est pas prêt à faire ce qu'il faut pour arrêter les grandes entreprises d'arnaquer Sue et Brianna et les autres personnes à travers le pays. Donc ça, c'est pourquoi on a décidé d'échec l'entente, et je me présente pour la prochaine élection comme votre candidat pour devenir le prochain premier ministre, parce que je sais que nous, les néo-démocrates, ont le courage de faire face à ces entreprises qui vous exploitent. On peut arrêter les entreprises qui vous arnaquent et on peut réduire le coût de la vie.
And is it time for an election, and can your party afford one right now?
Well, as I've said, I've ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau, and I know that means that an election is now more likely as a result. We are ready to fight an election whenever it happens, and we'll take the choice to Canadians. The choice is between Pierre Poilievre, who wants to tear down the things that you count on, or New Democrats who want to build it up and give you hope. That is a choice in the next election. The cuts of Conservatives under Pierre Poilievre or the hope of New Democrats to make your life better?
Hi, Mr. Singh. Al Sweeney from CHCH in Hamilton. So there's a lot of focus now on an election to come, but right now we're living through a crime wave, shootings in the street in broad daylight. I wanted to ask you about one particular riding, Hamilton Center, which is represented by the NDP, and businesses and people say they're afraid to go outside because of the crime, because of the shootings that's going on. What is the NDP doing right now to address this problem?
Thank you for the question. First, I want to say that this is a serious problem across the country. There are many communities where people are feeling really afraid. And you mentioned Hamilton Center. I can think of lots of communities across the country where people feel like they're not safe. And this is a serious concern because people have the right to be safe in their communities, should be able to take public transit, should be able to operate a business in their communities and feel safe. We know that fixing this problem to create safer communities is a complex one, but it's one that we can absolutely tackle. There's a number of areas where we've got to get serious about solutions. One we know is that when it comes to gun violence, there's a serious concern about guns getting across the border. When Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives had the ability to make decisions, they cut investments in border security, made it harder for our men and women that serve on the borders to protect our borders. They made it harder by reducing funding, by reducing staffing levels. We need to make sure that we are stopping guns from getting into our communities. That's one absolute step we need to take. We need to make sure that we're doing everything possible to keep communities safe. We also need to look at some of the roots of violence and address those with whatever the best evidence is to keep communities safe. We need to use experts' advice to ensure that communities and people are able to move freely, operate their businesses safely in wherever they live.
So could I ask you to answer in English, please, the question that you answered in French? Basically, if Pierre Poilievre moves a non-confidence motion, will you support it?
In terms of any motion moving forward, we're going to look at that motion before we decide. We're not going to presuppose an outcome of that. But I have ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau. And I know that means that an election has now become more likely. We are ready to fight an election whenever that happens. And when that election comes, the choice is going to be between Pierre Poilievre and conservative cuts who want to literally destroy our healthcare system. Want to make it so that the only way you can get care is if you can afford to pay for it out of pocket. Or New Democrats who want to fix our healthcare system, build it up so it is there for you and your loved ones when you need it. That is a choice in the next election.
Stephanie Hughes, Bloomberg. What do you need to see from the fall economic statement or spring budget in order to support the Liberals on votes?
For any question around votes, we're going to make that determination on a vote-by-vote basis. So we're going to see what the government presents, and as an opposition party, we'll look at it, and then we'll make our decision. But because I ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau, I know this now means that an election timing has become more uncertain, more likely. And we know that that means people will have a choice to make. And I'm looking forward to bringing that choice to Canadians, a choice between Pierre Poilievre and Conservatives who want to let their corporate buddies rip you off even more, want to let corporate landlords jack up rents and renovate you even more. Free season for corporate greed, or New Democrats who want to make sure you can afford to find a place to call home. That's going to be the choice in the next election. And I'm ready to bring that choice to Canadians.
And how worried are you about losing rural and blue collar votes or ridings to Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives in the next election?
I'm confident that we can remind Canadians what they already know about Conservatives. If you ask people in provinces across this country where they've seen just recently Conservatives, like in Manitoba, they saw what Conservatives do. They cut and gut the things that people care about. People remember in Manitoba, Premier Stephenson and Pallister, who destroyed the healthcare system. They see right here in Ontario, Doug Ford cutting and gutting our healthcare, education, giving to his buddies, making them richer and hurting people in the process. They see that happening. And so I'll remind people what they already know. Pierre Poilievre will do exactly the same. He will allow his corporate buddies to rip you off at the grocery stores, rip you off when it comes to your rent, or the choice between New Democrats. They're going to say, we're going to fight back against that corporate greed and make sure we lower the price of your groceries and lower the price of your rent. That's a choice in the next election.
I'm Mr. Singh, Adrian Gobriel, CTV National News. A couple questions for my colleagues in Ottawa. If the NDP do not do well in the by-elections, especially in Elmwood, Trascona, a riding New Democrats have held for the better part of 4 decades, should it prompt a review of your leadership? Your party in 3 years has made little to no gains as the Liberals' fortunes have plummeted. How much of that is on you?
I will be leading the party into the next election. And in that by-election, people will have a choice. In Elmwood, Transcona, people will have a very important choice. And in Manitoba, Manitobans have made that choice very recently. They rejected conservatives. They rejected the mean politics of conservatives and frankly, the cuts of conservatives in that province. And now that's a choice they have again, to reject the conservatives' approach of cutting and gutting the programs that people hold dear, like their health care and their pensions, and a choice between Pierre Poilievre and the conservative cuts or New Democrats who want to give people back hope, who want to strengthen pensions and fix our health care. That's a choice that people will have to make in this upcoming by-election. And we're going to take that choice to Canadians when the next general election happens as well.
Your dislike for the Tories is clear. You made it clear in your video that you released yesterday. Why do you believe that so many Canadians support them over your party?
I think Canadians right now are incredibly frustrated and let down by Justin Trudeau. And so naturally in Canada's history, when folks are upset with the red team, they then start looking at the blue team. But it's easy to remind folks what the Conservatives do. It's easy to remind folks what Conservatives prioritize. What they do is they cut, for sure. They cut healthcare, they cut pensions, and they give to their corporate buddies. They give them tax giveaways. They make their buddies even richer, and that hurts people. They have a choice in this next election: the cuts of Conservatives under Pierre Poilievre or New Democrats who want to restore hope, who want to strengthen your pension, who want to make sure big corporations aren't ripping you off and we can lower the price of your groceries and your rent. That's a choice that people are going to make in the next election.
Kyle Benning, Global News. Mr. Singh, how big of a factor was the way the Trudeau government handled the recent labor dispute with the rail workers a factor in ripping up this agreement?
It was another concrete example of Justin Trudeau and the Liberals caving to corporate greed. In that case, the workers weren't even able to go on strike. They were locked out in an example of bad faith. And what Justin Trudeau did was reward the bad faith of greedy corporations instead of standing up for working people. So it added to the overall examples that we had seen of Justin Trudeau and the Liberals simply being too weak, too selfish, and frankly, too beholden to corporate interests to stop big corporations from ripping off everyday Canadians. And so it added to that, the already mounting evidence. And it also added to the mounting case that Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are too weak to stop the serious threat of conservative cuts under Pierre Poilievre. And that's why we're saying this choice that people have in the next election is a very important one. It's really about the future of our country. What type of country do you want to build? One where conservatives under Poilievre cut the things that you need and let their corporate buddies rip you off, or where New Democrats give people hope that we can fix our health care, we can strengthen your pensions, and we can stop big corporations ripping you off to lower your rent and lower your groceries.
You spoke there about the Liberals being weak. Also, you spoke earlier about holding grocery execs to account. You also said that you're not sure when you would trigger election if that would happen. So how can you get Canadians to vote for you if you're seeing leniencies when it comes to not triggering the election, keeping a weak government in power, and also giving the Liberals a little bit of leniency when it came to implementing pharmacare?
We have ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau. The agreement is done. We've ripped it up. And we know that makes an election more likely. We're going to make a decision based on whatever votes come in front of us about how we vote on those votes. But let us be very clear. The next election is about a choice, and we are ready to take that choice to Canadians. The choice is between Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. We've seen what they're all about. They want to let their corporate buddies rip you off even more, give them free season to rip you off at the grocery stores, to jack up your rent if you got a corporate landlord, to rent evict you. Or New Democrats who want to lower your rents, who want to protect you, who want to stop big corporations from ripping you off. That is a choice in the next election. And we are very clear. Justin Trudeau is too weak to stop Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative cuts. The New Democrats are ready to take this fight on.
Brian Lilly with the Toronto Sun. You've made it very clear that you don't have faith in the Liberal government to deliver for Canadians. So a simple question, hopefully a simple answer. Do you have confidence in the Trudeau government?
Well, we've ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau. That speaks for itself. I've ripped up the agreement, and I know that that means an election is now more likely. We will look at every vote as it comes and make a decision as it comes. I'm not going to presuppose the outcome of a vote before it happens. We will look at each vote and make our decision as it comes. But let us be very clear. I am absolutely aware that ripping up the agreement with Justin Trudeau means an election is more likely. And that sets up the question for what is this election going to be about? I'm very strongly in belief that this election is about two competing visions for our country. The vision of Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives is a vision to cut the things that you want. They're bragging about wanting to cut healthcare and destroy universal public healthcare as we know it. So the choice is, do you want Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives to make our healthcare system one where you've got to pay out of pocket to see a doctor and only those who've got money can get healthcare that they need? Or you Democrats who believe very fundamentally that it should not matter how much you have in your wallet to determine the quality of care and how fast you get it. That is a choice in this upcoming election. What vision of Canada Canadians want?
You've said about a dozen times at least that you've ripped up the agreement and that makes an election more likely. But you've been asked several times and you won't answer. Do you have confidence in the Trudeau government as they stand now?
I will be clear again. We have absolutely ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau, and that means an election is more likely.
Clear. That's not clear. You're
And an election, whenever that election comes, we'll be ready to fight it. And the vision around that election is going to be an important one. Canadians will have to make a choice.
But can we get an answer?
Corporate control Conservatives, they're going to let their corporate buddies rip you off even more, or New Democrats are going to save you money on your rent and your groceries. That's a choice that Canadians will have to make.
Can we get an answer?
I will look at any vote that comes before us and we will make a decision in the best interest of Canadians, as any minority government normally operates.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Laura Stone, Globe and Mail. I think a lot of Canadians watching this right now might be a bit baffled by the political posturing that's going on. You've propped up the government for 2 years. Now, all of a sudden, they're terrible because of some vague notion of corporate greed. And you're refusing to say whether you'll bring down the government at the first opportunity. What is the point of all this, sir?
We have been very clear. We accomplished some significant things for Canadians. We got dental care for millions of Canadians. We're able to get the first steps on pharmacare. We've been able to get things done that are going to make people's lives better. But it became very clear to me, after having got these important things done, that people need more. And Justin Trudeau is unwilling, does not have the courage, doesn't have the strength, and is too beholden to corporations to stop big corporations from ripping off Canadians, which is driving up the cost of groceries and driving up the cost of rent. So we've ripped up the agreement, and we're going to move into a vote-by-vote basis. So any decision that comes before us will make based on what's in the best interest of Canadians. But let us be clear, this absolutely means an election is more likely. And that election is going to be about an important choice between the cuts of Pierre Poilievre or New Democrats who want to build a better future for you.
You announced that you've ripped up this agreement or canceled it about 5 days after Mr. Poilievre challenged you to do so. Why did you only come out after the Conservatives put pressure on you? And was it a mistake for you to not do this earlier?
I will never, ever take advice from Pierre Poilievre, who wants to destroy our healthcare system, who wants to cut pensions for seniors, who wants to let his corporate buddies rip off Canadians even more. I will never, ever take advice from Pierre Poilievre. Clearly, and my team can give you some more details on this, we filmed this video way before that came out. And to be honest with you, to be frank with you, Pierre Poilievre has been saying to tear up the agreement since 2 years ago. So no, it has nothing to do with Pierre Poilievre at all. It's a silly claim of Pierre Poilievre, which he often makes and something that he likes to make up. But it is an important choice that's in front of Canadians. We have ripped up this agreement. We've made this decision. We've gotten things done for Canadians. And now there will be a choice for Canadians to make. What type of country do we want to build? We want to build a country where Pierre Poilievre throws fuel on the fire of corporate greed, lets his corporate buddies have free reign to rip you off, to rent evict you, to jack up your rents, to jack up the price of your groceries, or a vision where New Democrats give people hope. where we lower the price of your groceries, where we lower the cost of your rent, where we say no to corporate greed that is hurting Canadians, and we say yes to people. That's a choice in front of Canadians, and that's a choice I'm presenting today.
Hi, Joe Breen with the National Post. You've made it clear that the railway stoppage and lockout was a major factor in your decision to end this agreement. My question is, would you have allowed that stoppage to go on indefinitely? And if not, what would you have done differently?
Well, on the railway stoppage, it's a very important question. And it's important to look at what actually went on. You have two large, highly profitable corporations, CN and CPKC, that both, in effect, if you look at the timing, it's pretty suspect, colluded to set up a scenario where both of those companies were in a labor dispute at the same time. If you look at the way that panned out, it's not coincidence that it seems every time they both time it to do it together. Then you look at their behavior. The workers did not even go on strike. The workers were locked out by the corporation. And instead of putting the blame on the corporation, CPKC and CN Rail, people often say, well, the workers are on strike because they want to keep Canadians safe. They were going to go on strike and they wanted to raise concerns about safety. And instead of letting this be negotiated at the negotiating table, Justin Trudeau decided to reward basically bad faith, rewarded these corporations that are already taking advantage of these workers and negotiating in bad faith. He rewarded that bad faith. That absolutely added to the evidence that we had that Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are too beholden to corporate interests to actually stand up to them, to stand up for Canadians. So that is an important example. And I want to make it clear, if there was any disruption in goods, the fault would go squarely at the feet of CP and CPKC and CN Rail. They're the ones, in one case, that locked out the workers. The workers didn't even go on strike yet. So it would be their fault that consumers and people weren't able to get the goods that they needed. All they needed to do is negotiate fairly and ensure that the safety concerns of the workers were met and negotiate a fair deal. That's what would have avoided any of the problems. But Justin Trudeau and the Liberals sided with big corporations again. And we're now seeing the forced binding arbitration, which was a horrible decision, hurts working people, and sets a bad precedent.
Mr. Singh, Jordan Olmsted with the Canadian Press. Aren't you worried that this move could jeopardize the programs that your party has been fighting for, such as pharmacare?
I appreciate the question. I want to be very clear on this point. If any of the programs do not move forward, it is the fault of Justin Trudeau. He has all the tools necessary to move forward. And if he does not move forward on pharmacare, even though it's been passed in Parliament, if he doesn't move to the next phase on dental care, even though all the legislation necessary has been passed, then it is his fault. It will be the Liberals' fault. And if they fail to deliver, I will finish the job when I'm Prime Minister.
Nous allons maintenant prendre des questions sur Zoom. We will now take questions on Zoom. Given that we have very limited time, we are going to please ask that we just ask one question each, please. Puisqu'on n'a pas beaucoup de temps, nous allons demander aux journalistes de poser une question uniquement. Nous allons commencer avec Hélène Buzetti, avec la Coop des informations. Veuillez poser votre question.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Singh. Comme vous le savez, il y a 3 élections provinciales cet automne, Colombie-Britannique, Saskatchewan, Nouveau-Brunswick. Dans votre tête à vous, j'aimerais savoir, est-ce que il faut absolument éviter qu'une élection fédérale se superpose à ces élections? Est-ce qu'en d'autres termes, s'il doit y avoir une élection, ça doit être après la fin du mois d'octobre, selon vous?
Donc, je dois encore, pour expliquer ma position, je dois dire, je sais que à cause du fait que j'ai déchiré l'entente avec les libéraux et j'ai déchiré l'entente avec Justin Trudeau, ça veut dire qu'une élection maintenant est plus probable que dans le passé. Et on est prêt. S'il y a une élection, on est prêt. On va décider chaque vote avec cette question. Est-ce que cette vote est dans l'intérêt des Canadiens? Est-ce que cette vote est dans l'intérêt des Québécois? Et on va décider. Donc, on est prêt de faire ce qu'il faut pour défendre les gens. Je n'ai pas peur de déclencher une élection et je vais décider chaque vote par le mérite de chaque vote.
We will now go to Raisa Patel with the Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Mr. Singh, thanks for taking our questions. You've mentioned corporate greed many times as the reason why you're exiting the deal. I feel like everything you've said today and yesterday were things that you were saying 1 year ago or 2 years ago about the Liberals. So what is new and specific about these criticisms that were serious enough to warrant leaving the deal right now?
One of the important things that I've mentioned in this press conference, and I think needs to be reiterated, is that we've got a lot done. A lot of that we were working on was either passed or was in motion. And so we've completed a lot. Having completed a lot of the work, it became very clear to me that Canadians also need more. And when it comes to the more, that's where Justin Trudeau has shown that he's too beholden to corporate interests to do more. Refused to move forward on steps to tackle corporate greed. It became very clear to me that he's not going to do what's necessary to lower the cost of groceries for Canadians, not going to do what's necessary to lower the rents for Canadians that are dealing with corporate landlords. And given the serious threat of Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives who want to cut and gut the things that we rely on, who want to destroy our healthcare system, completely eradicate the universal healthcare system. That's the goal of Pierre Poilievre. Given these serious threats and how weak the Liberals and Justin Trudeau are, we need to be the ones ready to fight back. And so we've ripped up the agreement. We're ready for an election. And when that election comes, the choice is going to be between the cuts of Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives or the hope of New Democrats to build a better future.
Nous allons maintenant à Émilie Bergeron avec la presse canadienne. C'est à vous.
Bonjour, Monsieur Singh. Bonjour, Monsieur Singh. Maintenant que vous n'avez plus d'entente avec les libéraux, est-ce que vous ne venez pas de donner plus de pouvoir au Bloc québécois? Autrement dit, eux pourraient se démarquer davantage que vous dans des discussions à la pièce avec les libéraux.
J'ai manqué votre question. Si vous pouvez répéter la question encore.
Oui, est-ce que vous m'entendez maintenant?
Oui.
Oui, donc, est-ce que en vous retirant de l'entente avec les libéraux, vous ne pensez pas que vous venez de donner plus de pouvoir au Bloc québécois, qui, eux, pourront faire valoir leurs points dans des discussions à la pièce avec les libéraux? Comment pensez-vous tirer votre épingle du jeu?
Ça, c'est une question plutôt, je pense, pour les libéraux. C'est pour eux décider où ils vont trouver l'appui pour les votes dans le futur. S'ils décident de travailler avec le Bloc, c'est leur décision. Ce qu'on a fait, on a déchiré notre entente. On va décider chaque vote par la question, est-ce que ça c'est dans l'intérêt des Canadiens? Est-ce que ça c'est dans l'intérêt des Québécois? Et on va continuer de se battre pour les gens. Et on sait qu'à cause de notre décision, ça met en question la date d'une élection, et une élection maintenant est plus probable. Et la prochaine élection va être une décision entre les coupures des conservateurs et Pierre Poilievre ou ramener l'espoir avec l'NPD et renforcer les programmes dont on a besoin.
Nous avons le temps pour une dernière question. We have time for a last question avec Raymond Filion, LCN TVA. C'est à vous.
Merci. Bonjour, M. Singh. Vous dites qu'une élection est plus probable maintenant, que vous n'avez pas peur d'en déclencher une. Pour vous, est-ce qu'une élection générale cet automne est souhaitable?
Je ne peux pas deviner quand une date d'élection va arriver, mais on a déchiré l'entente avec les libéraux. J'ai déchiré l'entente avec Justin Trudeau. Je sais, à cause de cette action, ça met en question la date d'une élection et c'est plus probable. Donc, on va décider chaque vote par le mérite de chaque vote et avec la question, est-ce que ça c'est dans l'intérêt des Canadiens? Mais la prochaine élection va être vraiment une décision, un choix entre les coupures des conservateurs ou un gouvernement néo-démocrate qui va ramener l'espoir. Des conservateurs et Pierre Poilievre qui va couper votre pension. Il a été clair qu'il veut faire ça. Ou les néo-démocrates qui veulent renforcer votre pension. Ça, c'est la décision dans la prochaine élection.
We have time for a last question. We will go to David Aiken with Global News. Please go ahead.
They're just letting anyone ask questions these days, huh, David?
are. And thank you very much for this last one. I appreciate the moderator's sort of indulgence, and I appreciate your patience, Claire, Norm, and everybody else standing there with you for giving Jagmeet the grilling here. I'm going to double barrel it on behalf of Western Canadian New Democrats. Let me put it to you, there's no way you're going to cause a federal election this fall, not a chance, because BC New Democrats will be furious. Way more important to re-elect Premier Eby. Carla Beck has got a chance to beat Scott Moe. Saskatchewan New Democrats would be furious with your caucus if you took away money, volunteers, and resources. So that's the one thing I want to get you to comment on. It's sort of Kyle or Ellen Bazzetti's question. And two, one of your senior MPs, Gord Johns, we love Gord, and Gord said this, and I'm going to quote it back to you. My constituents have given me plenty to work on, including infrastructure, shipbreaking regulations, reconciliation, mental health. Quote, my work isn't done, and forcing a third election in 5 years isn't very high on my list. So as I say, two things. Two premiers and leaders out there, they don't want a federal election. Neither does a senior member of your caucus. You're going to vote to support every single government bit of legislation, in my view, this fall. Correct?
Like I said before, we've ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau. And because we ripped up the agreement, we know very well that that means that a question of an election is more likely. And we are ready for an election. We are going to make a decision based on each vote as it comes to us. Not afraid of the outcome of those votes. We're going to make a decision based on what's in the best interest of Canadians. Whatever the vote is, whatever the issue is, we're going to make a decision that's in the best interest of Canadians. And we are ready for an election. And that election is going to be about a choice. I almost want you to say it with me. The choice is about Conservatives who are going to cut, or New Democrats who are going to take care of you, who are going to have your back. Conservatives want to let their corporate buddies rip you off even more, jacking up the cost of your rent and your groceries, or New Democrats want to lower the cost of your rent and your groceries. That's the choice in this next election.
Ceci conclut la conférence de presse. This concludes our press conference. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Wow.